Hello, everyone, and welcome to the February 2026 Aspen Family Business Group webinar. It takes a couple minutes for everyone to file in from the waiting room. So, as everyone joins us, we will just gradually start introducing myself, Shelley Taylor, Executive Director of the Aspen Family Business Group nonprofit. And with me here today are Jonathan Magidovitch, one of our board members and co-founder, also along with Joyce Hrinya, another co-founder and our director of growth and strategic initiatives. And they are going to be presenting the webinar today. Before we get started, a couple small housekeeping items. We will be using the Q&A feature today, so that you can choose to remain anonymous in your questions, or you can have your name listed, your choice. Chat doesn't give us that option, so that's why we use the Q&A. So please, we encourage you to be as interactive as you can in this format, because we would love to have this be as much of a dialogue as possible and answer your questions. Also, please note this webinar is being recorded. We save these recordings, we load them to our website. We also send them out to you, the attendees, afterwards, and that way they can live on and other people can learn from the webinars, even if they weren't able to attend in person. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joyce and Jonathan, and they are going to get us started. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Shelley. So, we're going to be talking about the value of working on values. And through the course of the hour, we're going to be utilizing values, show you how to do that, what values are, and how they can lead to a shared vision and why that matters. And then here we are 4 days before Valentine's Day. So, we are going to be dealing with what love's got to do with all of this.
So we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. We've gotten feedback from past participants that they like that format a lot. So I'm going to start by asking Jonathan the question of the hour. Adelaide, if we could advance the slides a couple. What are values and why do they matter? Why should those of us with shared assets really work on our values?
Thank you for the question. And let's go to the next slide, and that'll help get us some content to share around that question of what are values and why do they matter. So on this slide, there are 4 items, and values begin when we are in our infancy. In fact, arguably, there are folks who say we begin developing values in utero. So what are they? They're the ways that we survive in the world. They're the preferences that we learn to have because they give us the things that we need to survive. And we build on top of our values as we grow. They develop our priorities, our intentions, thoughts, words, and actions. We're on section 2 here. And this becomes how we show up in the world, for better or for worse. And there are positives about both of this. We're not usually aware of our own values. We're not usually aware of how we're showing up in the world vis-a-vis our values. We might experience them, and we're on block 3 here, as things that matter to us. And we might know something matters to us if we do care to think about it, and we'll get to why we would do that. We would know we care about it if we spend something of value of ours around something. Like if we put time or money into something, that's probably something we care about. That is probably a value. And the last item on this slide, our values are fairly consistent over our life, but things can make our values change. Just for example, God forbid we were in a car accident, we might subsequently, when we go to replace that car, if it was totaled, we might look for a car and the value of car safety has risen. That might be a value change.
So, Jonathan, one of the questions that we get from family members is give me some examples. Help me understand what I should think about in terms of what values are.
And we've got a slide for that too. Go figure. Thank you for the question. Let's pull up the next one about some examples of what values are. I'm going to be a little bit quiet for a little bit of moment here and take a look at these categories. Read some of what these values are under each one. So these values, you can see that we can have values that are our own, personal values. We can, in a family, grow up and share values. Likewise, in a community. So there are different levels. Moral value, it's not about a level of value. It's about a quality of the value. Likewise with spiritual values. This is how we feel about the goodness or the rightness of things. There are cultural values, and that could be things as the spicing we like in our food, the dances we like to dance. And then there are values that help us achieve other values, like gaining tools through education. And then there are other values that pull us apart, fear, envy. So these are all examples of types of values. If we might, let's go to the next slide. As we develop our values, we're doing it in our own way and nobody else. And this is very important. Nobody else will have the same set of values we do. Arguably, we don't even have the same full set of values. We have clashes within our own sets of values. But certainly to have an expectation that we're going to share a full set of values with somebody, even if it's our beloved, of 50 years, not going to happen. And Joyce, later in the webinar today, when you talk about shared values and shared vision, that becomes extremely important about what kind of expectations we can have about commonality of values.
So, Jonathan, at this point, I think it would be really helpful to our audience to understand how values work and how they work together as we think about our shared assets as a family or family in business.
So the way values work, when they're our own values, they're shaping our action. But when those values come to play in a group, a family business, we are putting ourselves into a situation where operating, showing up in the world completely comfortable about who we are and how we do things, where we want to go from here to where. If we try to do that without conversation and communication about values, sharing values, talking about what I am composed of as far as values, what you are, what I care about, what I think this business should spend money on, what our investments, what our goals should be. If we try to do this in an ill-considered or non-considered way, we will be bumping into each other. And that can be joyous and there can be creativity that happens with that, but it can also cause judgmentalism and anger and friction and all that. So what we're trying to do is not to eliminate differences in values, but to see where we are and where the people are with whom we want to and are living and working with are, and find common ground and go forward. So that's sort of the algorithm here. Was that clear or clear as mud, Joyce?
Yeah, and I think if we move forward a couple slides, you have a couple of more functional ideas about values that I think could also be helpful to the group.
And we will be getting there. We will be getting there. Absolutely. I want to, before we move on to the next slide, though, I do want to say once again that because we have our own values, we have our own fingerprint, and nobody else does have the same, and we're trying to work together, there's going to be differences. And those differences we might call tension points. And like I said, those can be creative because tension can be the mother of creativity. If we get out of a comfort zone, we might land somewhere new and better. But to be aware that there are emotions associated with that. And when we're feeling those tensions, it's probably values, but we are probably experiencing the value differences emotionally. We might be judgmental. We might be, at worst, accusatory, certainly possibly misunderstanding. So that's probably where it's coming from. And, in some of the advertisement for this, I said it was like a hidden tax. If we don't do this work and consideration about values, it's like we're paying a tax that we don't really have to pay if we do a little bit of work on values. So there's another slide coming up and how values work as we've just been discussing. They shape us. I'm going to give an early childhood example. And by the way, this background on values, when we're done with this webinar, all of our participants are going to get some collaterals from this, and there will be a bibliography. And you will see in there where this information is coming from. And you'll also see some tools for working in this area on your own or with your peers in your family business. So we are born and we come into a world And we are a bundle of needs with very little capacity or agency to get those needs met. And we do things, and then things happen. We might be uncomfortable in a diaper or hungry, and we scream and cry, and big people come in and do something. And if we like it, we might learn to do that thing again that brought them to us to get our needs met. Values, as we label them, are associated with how we're labeling and thinking about the things that we do that successfully get us what we need. That's what values are for. That's what they do. Should we move on?
Yeah, it sounds like that could show up at any time in our life, to your point earlier about how values tend to be fairly consistent over our lifetime, unless we have some kind of a traumatic experience. So, if that's the way that I might have gotten what I needed earlier in
Yeah,
my life, that might still be playing out in a discussion of shared assets later in my life. Does that
absolutely.
sound
It is, and I'm glad that you brought that point up because here's what we're gonna do. The whole point is we've gotta get in more calories in life than we're expending. We've gotta get what we need in order to survive. And if at age 3 weeks, we learned something that worked and we want that comforting or that food or that caring, and that can take different forms as we grow up and in different locations in our life. But we are going to always have a preference to use those techniques, exercise those values all along in our life. We will therefore find ourselves bringing into our life, being closer to, wanting to be with people who, when we do that old X that we always do to get our Y, we're going to want to be with people for whom that works for us, as opposed to being with people who they say, "What are you doing?" That means nothing. So that's the consistency that you were asking about, Joyce. And the next slide, or is there more? Here's what you were talking about.
yeah,
So, functional statements about values. Item one, we make decisions. These decisions are all about survival as infants, but they could be about winning as we get older. As we get more successful, we may have chips in the bank, so to speak. So, it might not be seeming like we're talking about life and death decisions, but if you're in a family business meeting that's going off the rails, it will sure feel like a life and death decision at the moment. Our reality is being shaped by those even when we're not aware. And
hmm,
that's item two here. And they shape our behavior with others. Now, the other people that we're with, they also have a set of values that they're more or less aware of. So we're having these interactions, we're bumping into each other. And when you're together around that meeting table, you're seeing that live.
right.
And the closer the match, the more considered and self-understand and mutual understanding that you have about values, that meeting is going to go more smoothly. You will know more clearly the substance of what you're talking about. And emotion is a beautiful thing, but there will be less rapid fire emotion sort of sparking around the room, which is positive. That's a good thing. So here's a key word on item four here. Our alignment of values with our family business values relates to our work success. And here's a key word, and our joy. It's in your first name. And you're going to be talking more about exactly how we align and what that looks like,
Yeah.
later on in this. So I think we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, the next slide's really, in my view, a question about situationality and how we're thinking about being in that meeting room, maybe versus some of those other situations that you had talked about with our friends in different community settings. Are values always consistent, or can I think about them differently as it relates to being in that family business meeting room?
Yes, you can think about them differently. I'm going to put a word and I want to park it in our consciousness, and then we're going to get back to it. The word is authenticity. Authenticity. So the question on the table here is, do I have the same values everywhere? Do I have, and we can look at the next slide. So with family and friends, I may have, first of all, I have the same values everywhere. my totality, that fingerprint, that's me. Wherever I go, that goes with me. When I'm with my family, there may be some of those values that get expressed as a priority expression. When we're with family, there may be certain kinds of closeness, there may be certain kinds of tasks that are associated with that space. And it may be the same or it may be somewhat different with friends, but I group that sort of together. In political and social entities, we may very well, we still have the same values, but in that realm, we may do and say and almost feel like we're very different than we are in family and friends. And likewise, if we're in a religious setting, we may be thinking about salvation and eternity, and we may not be thinking about that when we're item 4 in our family business. Each realm doesn't change our values, and we do this probably more or less consciously. It brings forward the values that we're expressing. So the values that we express at work or in our family business, they will be unique. Now I want to get back to the authenticity. As we move in these boundaried areas, the flavor of our value fingerprint that we're expressing and other people are experiencing certainly will be different. What we want to, let me put it this way. If we try to express values that are not authentic to who we are, if we don't really have a value and yet say that we do or pretend that we do, who did you vote for? And you say something that isn't true or you dodge, people they pick it up and they experience, at worst, they experience us as dishonest. And that does not go over well. It can build and deepen in the little anthill.
Right.
So
So
what
it sounds like there's
yes,
good and bad values. How do I think about good and bad values, particularly as it relates to working together to create shared values for shared assets?
yeah. I am still thinking about this. I would like to be able to say that there's no such thing as bad value. There might well, if let's go to, I think, the next slide, or maybe even already the one after that. Are there good and bad values? Well, I'm going to want to say no. But let's go to the next slide. So one of the ways that we could think about a value that maybe isn't working for us anymore, if we developed a value at say at a very young age, and as we went through life, maybe we moved to a different country or that now it may become dysfunctional for us. So is it a bad value? It's just a value that's no longer in place. We'll see what happens to it. Maybe it gets recast. The other thing about values, good or bad, my values worked for me. The person across the room, their values worked for them, but the world that they interacted with and gave them their values and what they came up with, that may be threatening to me. And I may say it's bad. So what am I going to do if I still have to work with that person, if I can't unfamily them? Yeah. Yeah. And there are ways of unfamilying people. It's not a pretty thing. When other people's values feel threatening to me, this is where if we try to do things like you're bad and judgmental and storm, and we will only make the situation worse, and we will confirm for ourselves and probably others in the room how impossible the situation is. And that is not a good foundation for a family business or any business to build on. It gets to be about the interpersonal blaming and judging, and we don't want that. If we can remember, there are emotions moving around this room now. We're not talking about the substance of the issues here.
Hmm.
What are the underlying values? What happened in me? What flared up? And that can be very helpful. I am not talking about us psychoanalyzing ourselves sitting around that table. And what I am talking about, you all as our participants will get a tool called a values unfolding exercise that is a relatively simple way of getting at your own values, which I'll say it now. I recommend that you do that. And the first time I did it, it took a long time. It took, almost 2 hours. I'm slow, but to do it one time is not going to be enough because situations change, we change. So if there is a major change in your life, I'm going to recommend you do that exercise again. So other people's values, if we get threatened, let's do the values work. Let's not do the throwing accusations and emotions around them. Are there good or bad values? Item 3, there are some values that we may think are so cool that we want to own them and call them our own, but we
Yep.
may not get there. I want, the saint in the slums of India, she did amazing work. If our family businesses could do as much movement in the world as she did with nothing, it would be amazing. But I may or may not get there. And I may not feel good about myself and my current values if I haven't achieved my aspirational values. And what I would say to that is let's all give ourselves a break. Let's know what our aspirations are and get there as we get there.
And Jonathan, I think that's a wonderful opportunity to also be authentic about that, particularly with other family members. If you're really seeking something and you're not there, but you're being inauthentic about already being there, that can be a problem too.
Yes. And people are going to experience that, as you just said, not good. So I think that does bring us to shared values. And Joyce, I think you're on with that.
Yeah. And I know that Shelley had just shared a question in the Q&A about how to make this work. And I think the facilitation of these conversations is really important. That can be someone in your family that has an authentic relationship with everybody. Sometimes we call that the chief emotional officer, and that everybody goes to that feels like is the best listener in the group. That could be a trusted advisor, someone that is your attorney, your accountant, someone that you trust in your matters of shared assets to really help facilitate that conversation. But the most important thing is to really get on the same page and find your North Star. And I have one of my most favorite pictures of a beautiful night sky and that North Star right up there. Co creating that, that's a word that some of the founders of the Aspen Family Business Group have used for many years. Working together through that dialogue, through that communication, it probably facilitated with an advisor is really important to get there because sometimes, to Jonathan's points about different individual values, that can be very, very challenging. And so we recommend, and we have some tools that the team will share after the webinar. If you could flip to the next slide, a facilitated process that almost looks like this hourglass. So you'll be working through some of the tools that Jonathan already mentioned to kind of take those individual values that everyone has and really co-create that shared values through a trust and active listening facilitation. And in that process, the facilitator will really work to really sift down the very essence of the values that the family has together for your shared assets and how that can work to be a shared value for your enterprise so that you're enabling the group's values to really drive the ideas that follow. And really encourage you to do the toolkits that will be shared after the webinar that we obviously don't have time to go through. But this is sort of our shared values hourglass approach. Jonathan, anything that you'd add to the facilitation best
Yes.
practices?
So that facilitation is going to end up with a list of values. Put them on the wall, make a poster. And there's one company that I work with near my home that their board has made a point at the beginning of their every board meeting. They read their value statement out loud.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. Actually, they rotate it. They'll either the values statement, or they'll read their mission statement, or they'll read their vision statement. And this is a way of reminding everybody. We do have a question that we received from our group today about doing this when there's friction in the room. What do you do? That might be it's a hard time to sit back and read values. It might feel inauthentic to do it right then. What you would probably do then is take a deep breath, take a bio break, uh, and then come back and maybe read the values and go forward.
And it's really a support system for the group. So to that point about friction, there's something that's not working fully for the good of the entire group at that point, which is usually individual values that are in conflict. And actually, this support system that we're offering up as an idea here is really a way of working through that friction by trying to understand how individual values can be co-created into shared values for the business. And that doesn't mean that the individuals in the group are changing their values. It's simply that the group is working together to create the values for their shared assets. And I think
Yes.
that's a really important point, that the tool sets that we offer up are merely support systems to help work through that friction, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Yes. Yes.
So thank you for that question, because I think that added a lot of good color to the slide for sure. So now it is almost Valentine's Day, John, and you said you wanted to talk about a very important value um, in our.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So I want to talk about love. And there's nothing stronger. It is the atomic reactor level power source. And by the way, it is a power source that is the secret sauce, the magic of family businesses that differentiates them from non-family businesses, because in these it's okay to love each other. It's a good thing, and it's a good thing to be explicit about it. And every family has their own levels and ways of doing that. That's a value set as well. So it's a core principle. It guides our emotional connections. And I want to put up a slide that comes from Frederica Gregorato. Not sure if I'm saying it right. Love makes us learn how to stay in trouble in the material world. It gives us persistence. She is on the faculty of a think tank in Vienna, and my wife and I happened to be in Vienna a couple of years ago. Loved it. Amazing town. When we got home, I found out that the Institute for Human Science is based there, and I should have gone down the street from our hotel and visited Frederica. What she's, by the way, it was not easy to understand her speaking in this lecture, but you're going to have the link for it, and I recommend it. She's not a native English speaker. The talk is in English. And what she's talking about here, remember I mentioned the tension, the
Mhm.
friction that we're all aware of?
Yep.
Why would we stay in the room when it's not comfortable and there's friction? And this is what her answer is. It's because of love. That functions like a bond that keeps us in that place. And that is the energy. And again, the secret power of family businesses, that with that love, however your family expresses it, you will be able, you will have the stick to itiveness to do enough work to move forward. It works that way.
The other thing I love about this, Jonathan, is this word persistence, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times it's not going to happen on the first try. It
No.
might not happen on the second try that you get to that shared value place. But the persistence that love gives us to be able to continue to work on it is really the key.
Yes. Everything. There's a couple sides to everything. When Frederica, and this is like an hour-long lecture, she talks about this can also keep people in situations that everybody would say they should get out of. And love can be sticky. And we know we get stuck in situations that objectively may not be the best thing for us. But I don't want to talk about that. I just want to acknowledge that that can happen. But back to the persistence, when there's that tension, when there is that unavoidable and fully natural lack of congruence in our values networks that we each fingerprints that we each have, we're not talking about undoing that. What we're talking about is being able to tolerate the tension with the love enough to get us through to the next moment, to keep the flow going.
Right. We're not breaking out of the hourglass, we're staying in it.
We're staying in it. And love doesn't mean we give up agency. What I mean by agency is me as Jonathan, you as Joyce, Ellie, you as Shelley. You know who you are. You know more or less, you know what your values are because I know you both have done the unfolding exercise. You're not going to give up your agency. And in fact, Frederica goes so far as to say, love without agency, it's not love, it's domination. And that has implications. And there will be a future webinar when love, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it's going to be on love. It's going to be how to work this, respecting love for the power and beauty of itself, and how to work it, maintaining agency in a family business.
So, Jonathan, I know you have a really special little tidbit for us related to family business and love and Valentine's Day coming up here. So, why don't you share that?
Okay. Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it. I think that's the next slide.
It is.
It's a little bit of math, a little bit of arithmetic. So here's the tidbit, and this is absolutely because we're 4 days out from Valentine's Day, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Valentine's Day. It's our older son's birthday. I hope someone else's too. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. Here it is, the family business love math formula. There are 3 equations here. Actually, the first one is not an equation because we have no idea what 1 plus 1 is. It could be anything and it could be nothing. If you think about it, 1 plus 1 is 2 people who are in the same subway car going somewhere else in town. It's 2 people crossing paths in an aisle in the grocery store. There's not necessarily anything that comes from that. But 1 plus 1, B, we're on B here, plus love, you've got something there. There's something that is going to happen. We don't know what it is. And a lot of what does happen is when the one brings their values and the other one brings their values, and there is love among or between them, that's when things happen. And they happen because of that persistence of being together and wanting to be together, things grow. I call 1 plus 1 plus heart family. We're all in the 21st century. The meaning of family isn't just one thing. There are lots of ways to be a family. Every one of them has love in it, expressed in the way that that family does express their love. I will share, this is again from one of my clients, a little further away from where I live. When I first started working with them, all they did was yell at each other, full voice, saying horrible things about each other, and then went on and did their business. And it was fine. And that was how they expressed their love. There is so much that can go on here. If you have been hearing what we, Joyce and I and Shelley, are talking about today, and you're saying, we don't have any love in our family business, what are they talking about? Is is the issue there. Love isn't just romantic love, but there's the love of good love for your siblings, or a parent's love for a child, or love of country, love of material objects. The next, C, 1 plus 1 plus love plus money, that's a family business. And when we start, that's the full formula for now. Think about what happens though. If on formula C, if I took out one of the items, if I took out one of the ones, God forbid there was a divorce or a death or something, whatever, does the family business go away? It could. It will certainly alter in some way. But very often what happens is someone else joins, or the people who are in the business take on the pieces that might have been held by the person who left. It tends to work itself out. So losing one of the integers is not the end of a family business. What happens if the money goes out of a family business? Hopefully it doesn't ever happen, but it does. What does that family and family business do? Either the whole thing breaks up and they go and they reconstitute into other family groups, other business groups, but usually what happens is somebody figures it out, and that somebody is usually the group. And they do it by going back to their values, by talking about what it is that they want to be doing and where they want to go with that. They do values, they do mission, they do vision.
And what a beautiful segue, Jonathan, to our next slide.
Let's do it.
The incredible importance of shared vision. And another really, really important support system tool is once those shared values are created, and Jonathan's clients have it up on the wall, read before every meeting, I think that's a wonderful idea. We also want to understand what the owners think about as their individual vision for those shared assets. And that can take a lot of different roads. And Shelley's also going to provide some toolkits for thinking about the way you think about yourself or your client's shared assets and the vision for those assets. And then once again, a very similar exercise to co-create that shared vision. And I cannot speak more highly of the importance of the creation of the shared vision, again, facilitated consistent with the way you did your values work through active listening and proactive facilitation. Because we can't have X different individual visions for our shared assets or family business together. We have to co create that into one shared vision. And this becomes such a critical tool set for everyone owning the family assets, working in the family assets, being influenced in the community by those family assets, because that's what the owners of the business really and truly together want this business or shared assets to have as a vision. And that becomes the absolute core that enables all of the group's ideas, the strategies of the business, the executional objectives for the business to happen. Because without the vision, it's just like having not shared values. I don't know what good looks like. And then my very favorite statement that I love to share, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So again, another hourglass that really helps focus everyone to co-create what you want to do with those shared assets. And we've got a really nice toolkit that we'll follow up with. And then just to kind of put a really important strategic framework on it, if we'll advance the slide, this is really the strategic pillars. So we've created shared values, we've created shared vision, and now we're able to create some strategic pillars for the business or shared assets that the family owns together that are completely in alignment. And by doing that, I always like to have everybody keep things very, very focused. So I usually come up with a maximum of 3 goals, and the group gets to decide how long the time frame is. And I usually recommend a year. And those 3 strategic pillars are created again by a co-created, facilitated process, just like doing your values and vision. And once those pillars are created, then the executional objectives to support each one of the pillars can also be created. And then on one sheet of paper, Adelaide, if you'll fill in the slide, we can have a strategic framework that the owners and the management of a business or a family shared assets can really utilize to execute the objectives that align with the strategy, the vision, and the values of the family.
Sorry, the slideshow has frozen. We're having technical difficulties, but this is the thing that you will get afterwards with the recording.
It's in the toolkit. And this is certainly not something that can come together in a couple of hours, just like your shared vision can't, nor your values. But that's where that word persistence that Jonathan mentioned earlier becomes so important, that you might not get it on the first meeting or the second, but the benefit to having all of this strategy and tactics aligned to support your values and vision can really drive you all towards optimizing your shared assets together. And with that, I think we wanted to see if there were any more questions and then do our summary kind of takeaway slide. Shelley, do we have any questions?
Do not see anything in the Q&A.
Okay. So we wanted to leave you with 3 takeaways, and then Jonathan, I'll see if you have any other color commentary to add. Your interest in working together should be facilitated through a shared values and vision discussion that's enabled by love, trust, and active listening to each other, leading to achieving your strategic and executional goals for your shared assets. And this support system and toolkits, we feel, is sort of the secret sauce to really working together.
I think that's the summary. That's it. First of
talk
all,
through that.
I want to thank all of you who have given us an hour of your time, and we hope it was valuable. And we very much want to hear from you, thoughts, questions. And the way that you can reach out to us is please visit our website. I'll say it out loud, but then you'll also get it in the materials that come later. Our website is aspenfamilybusiness.org. On the website, you'll find you can reach out to us. We are putting up there a growing body of resources, our own resources, 40 years of Aspen resources, as well as incredible colleagues in the field of family business consulting are allowing us to put their work on our site as well. In addition, and Joyce Yeoman's work on creating our AI bot, and we call the bot Sam. And you can ask Sam. Sam is a small language model AI that has been trained on all of the Aspen material. Ask it your questions. By the way, this is all available to you, no cost. Please enjoy, please use it. There's Sam. And then I did also want to let you know about our next event, that is Coffee with Leslie. That's Leslie Dashu, and she's our board chairman of the Aspen Family Business Group. And Coffee with Leslie, I know the date. It's February 20th. Joyce, Shelley, do you know the time in any of our time zones? Or for sure it'll be in what we send you out. But February 26th, Coffee with Leslie. I will try to be there, and we may continue with a more informal conversation about values, but feel free in the coffees to bring anything that you want to bring.
Yes, and those are an interactive, or much more so than this webinar format. So a
Yeah.
chance for you to show up and engage in real-time dialogue. That is at 1 p.m. Eastern on February
6th.
26th.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep.
Okay. Great. Great.
Thank you all for joining us today. As was mentioned, you will receive within a couple days, definitely no longer than a week, you'll receive this recording and the other materials that we talked about. And we're happy that you joined us, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars and in future coffees. Thank you,
See you
Joyce and
soon.
Jonathan and Adelaide, for running the controls.
Thank you, Shelley, for being our fearless leader at Aspen Family Business Group as our executive director.
Thanks, Joyce.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.